Hi students, today we'll talk about radicals and rational expressions. At the end of this lesson, you should be able to simplify square roots, products of square roots, quotients for a square root, and also to rationalize denominators. Now let's review again what square roots are. So when we have a square and we're trying to take the area of this square, we would multiply the sides. 4 times 4 is 16. So the square root of 16 would be 4. Looking at this example to show our work, we have the square root of 4, so we can break this down into 2 times 2. When you see a pair, you get to circle it, and you get to bring one out based on the definition of square root. So the square root of 4 is 2. Let's go ahead and do the square root of 24. So 24 is 4 times 6. 4 is 2 times 2, and 6 is 2 times 3. Writing this underneath the square root sign, we have 2 times 2 times 2 times 3. And looking for pairs, I can see a pair of 2s, so I get to bring that out. So I end up with a 2 on the outside, and on the inside, 2 times 3 is 6. So 2 square root 6 is the square root of 24. Next, I'm going to go ahead and simplify this square root. So breaking this down, I can write everything underneath the square root sign. 8 is 2 times 2 times 2. I write x times x times x, since there's 3 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4 y's, and a z. And all of these are being multiplied together. I'm looking for pairs, so I get to circle this pair of 2's. There's a pair of x's, and a pair of y's, and another pair of y's. Bring all of this to the outside. So a 2 can come to the outside, an x, a y, and another y. Underneath the square root sign, we still have a 2 right here, and the z. So lastly, to simplify what's on the outside of the square root, this is 2xy squared, since there's 2 of them, and then square root 2z as your final answer. Now moving on, let's talk a little more about multiplication and division. So when you find the product of square roots, you can simply just multiply the number underneath the square root sign if it can't be simplified from there. So the square root of 3 times the square root of 5 is the square root of 15. Looking at these examples, we have the square root of 6 times the square root of 3. I notice that 6 can be broken down into 2 times 3. 3 can't be broken down at all. So I'm going to write this as 2 times 3 equaling the 6 times 3 again. I see a pair of 3, so I get to bring that out. So I have 3 square root 2 as the final answer. Looking at example 2, I'm going to do the same thing I did as in example 1. So I see that I can break down this 10 into 5 times 2 and write everything underneath the square root sign. So I have the square root of 5 from the first part times 5 times 2 from the second part here. I see a pair of 5, so I get to take it out. So this is 5 square root 2 as the final answer. As a note, it is okay if you'd rather multiply 5 times 10 first and end up with the square root of 50. Breaking down square root of 50 into the factor tree, you'll still get the same simplification as we did here. Now for the quotient, we're going to take the square root of the numerator and the square root of the denominator. So you can write it like this. The square root of 4 divided by the square root of 9. The square root of 4 is 2. The square root of 9 is 3. And this is the final answer. Same thing, looking at example 3 now. The square root of 4 thirds, we take the square root of both the top and the bottom. So the square root of 4 is 2, and the square root of 3, we can't break that down any further, so we can leave that how it is. Now on the next page, we're going to learn how to rationalize this denominator so that we don't have a square root on the bottom here. And now looking at example 4, the square root of 18x squared over 8. So I noticed that 18 and 8 can both be divided by 2, or reduced first. So I'm going to do this now. 18 divided by 2 is 9, and 8 divided by 2 is 4. And I still have x squared at the top. So now I take the square root of both the top and the bottom. So the square root of 9, I can break that down into 3 times 3, and then x squared is x times x. On the bottom, the square root of 4, I can break that down into 2 times 2. Always looking for pairs. So I see a pair of 3's and a pair of x's on the top, so those come out. And on the bottom, I see 2 times 2, which is a pair, so that 2 gets to come out. My final answer is 3x on top over 2. And that's the final answer. Now let's look at how to rationalize a denominator. So first we need to understand that rationalize means to make sense of. And the denominator, of course, means the bottom portion of a fraction. When we're asked to simplify, we're not allowed to leave a square root sign in the bottom or the denominator of a fraction. So looking at this example up here, the square root of 4/3. This was actually example 3 on the last page. So we ended up with 2 over the square root of 3. Now we need to get rid of the square root sign on the bottom because it's not simplified. The trick is to multiply by the square root of 3 over the square root of 3 because we can multiply anything by the number 1. The square root of 3 over 3 is just the number 1 when you divide, so we're allowed to multiply here. Now you just multiply straight across. 2 times the square root of 3 is 2 square root 3. And on the bottom, the square root of 3 times the square root of 3 is just 3. And again, that's because we have a pair, 3 times 3 together here, so you circle that and bring it out as the denominator. Okay, let's look at example 1 now on rationalizing. We see a square root of 5 on the bottom. We need to multiply by the square root of 5 over the square root of 5 to get the square root out of the denominator. Now multiply straight across. 4 times the square root of 5 is 4 square root 5. In the denominator, the square root of 5 times the square root of 5 is just 5. We can almost do this in our head now because the square root of 5 times 5, that's a pair. You bring it out, and then you see that it's just 5. Or if you want to multiply, 5 times 5 is 25, and the square root of 25 is, of course, 5. And we can leave it like this. Looking at example 2, we need to rationalize this fraction. So to get rid of the square root of x minus 3 on the bottom, you multiply by it. Square root of x minus 3 over the square root of x minus 3. Multiply straight across like we did before. So the top portion, the numerator, is 2 square root x minus 3. We leave the 2 on the outside, and we keep square root x minus 3. On the bottom, same as before. So we have x minus 3 times x minus 3, all underneath the square root sign. This is a pair. There's 2 x minus 3, so that gets to come out. In the denominator, it's just x minus 3 as our final answer. Okay, you guys go ahead and try these 4 problems here. If you'd like to try the challenge problem, this is a good one to do as well. Okay, bye.